Retta Short. Thank you. So we want to thank all of those who work day in and day out, all of our wonderful staff. You can go to the next one.
No, we can't.
Oh, celebrate! Woo! And our ministers, by the way, which I didn't put a slide in with their photos because they're going to be up here. All of our lay leaders that we sometimes go unnoticed. So thank you to all the lay leaders who volunteer their time. Yes. And our tech team. What could we do without our tech team? Yes. Okay, now I'll ask Rev Scott to come up.
All right, so, got my fancy laser pointer just because, you know me. So, pandemic, endemic, changes we have yet to understand. Our culture, our congregation, ourselves, we've been changed significantly, not just by political and social forces, but by the disruption of pandemic. It's going to take another few years to discern our new reality more thoroughly. And right now, as after the 1920 fire, turn these off, Debbie Ann, only because it diminishes the slides. Don't worry about my face being a little dark. Now, as after the 1920 fire and the Spanish flu pandemic, when we reopened, this is a time of institutional renewal. There were significant plans to really strengthen the institution, and they worked. And we've been working on such plans going forward as well. We can rebuild this congregation stronger than it's ever been, but we're going to need the people and the resources to do that. We've proven, you have proven, that this institution remains a vital part of the social and justice fabric, not just of Montclair, but of Essex County, New Jersey. And so we need to take care of this place. Our treasurer will speak more thoroughly about the financial piece of that in a little bit. But programmatically, we're living into that promise. A lot of the initiatives that you have done, everything from the Changing Mind of God and the sweat teams and the How House initiative and all these things that you all do to help people who may not be you are the hallmark of what we do here. And some of the programs, give me the next slide please, that I run, particularly, Theology on Tap, the Changing Mind of God. The Changing Mind of God had 32 residents to do Bible study in a Unitarian Universalist congregation, 32 registrants, all right? So there's obviously something here that you all are really looking for, and hopefully we're delivering it. Self-service shared ministry. I probably say that 149 times a day. Our staff is small but mighty, and as such, we need to honor the boundaries around that staff and their capacity. This means volunteers will continue to own and perform the tasks needed to live into our mission with whatever staff support we can provide, but just understand that there are limits. For instance, Jordan, our new administrator, he only works 20 hours a week, and most of those are Mondays and Fridays. He also has a different job description than Danielle worked under. So, we shared that job description when he was hired. I'll be sharing all that stuff again early in the summer. So we honor that reality by not expecting more than we should and doing as much as we can ourselves. Self-service shared ministry. You can go back to that same slide, I think. So many things are being asked for, and our volunteer recruitment still hasn't come back as strong as we like after the pandemic. And as you know, we can only offer programming for which we have enough volunteers, and Judith Hogan will really emphasize this. later. Because yes, we do hope to offer more children's classes next year, but we will not and cannot if we don't have enough teachers or students registered. And teaching is always our #1 volunteer need. So the best way you can help this place is to contribute financially and to be a teacher. Advanced planning. Make sure that when you are part of a team, if you have a major event, that when you're planning a major event that you expect a lot of people to attend, that you begin that planning 4 to 6 months in advance, and make sure that you're planning with other teams if you're expecting more than 20 or 25 people to be in attendance. This sort of models our collaboration, shares the load, self-service, shared ministry. All right, preparation. It's about that time of year when teams and committees will have their first meeting of the next congregational year. So remember, at that first meeting you have, whether it's July, August, make sure that you review your budget, you review the strategic plan, you look at the leader's handbook. Almost any question you have will be found there. And as for budget, make sure you have a budget before you spend money. I know that sounds silly, but just make sure you have a budget before you spend money. And then facilities. Go to the next slide. All right, so we did a lot of work this year. And so over here, this is our new air conditioning compressor system. It's out that window over there. And this is what it looks like in the attic. Brand new air handlers at higher CFMs. 2 of them where there used to be 1. It's for efficiency's sake. And this is where they hard piped the new ductwork. Why is that important? Because the reason the old one failed is it was all soft ducts which got crushed, and so the air was being pushed and cooling the attic and not this room, and eventually it burnt up. This over here is a rolling condition. If you see anything that you think is being caused by the project next door, let me know. We are about to make sure we have an attorney on retainer in case we need some legal action or at least urgent messages. To make sure that they're actually being good neighbors. As you can see, a sinkhole was opened in the driveway, and the bricks that we had made for the walkway are now separating. This is not a good thing, and we're on top of it, but you know, it's always good to have more eyes and ears. And lastly, one of the things that we have to do this summer, if you look at the top of the chimney, that parging, that old cement on the outside of the chimney is coming apart. And that is it's not as expensive as I feared, but it's coming out of our capital fund, so it's not coming out of the budget. But we have to get rid of that, because if that falls, it will fall on our new roof. And so for about $10,000, we found a really good contractor to put scaffolding on the roof, take the old stuff down, and put the new stuff on. That is my report. Reverend Anya is next, and I guess I will end up being the clicker for her.
So I just have a short report. One of the things that we do every year as we plan for the leaders gathering is we talk to a number of the core leaders of the congregation, and we determine what were all the wonderful things that we did this past year. And then we create a beautiful word chart, word picture of all of the amazing things that we've done. You'll see that and of are rather large. I accept that. I think and is a perfect thing to have in the center of what you're celebrating. And you'll also see words like successes and out front, change, brunch. Remember that New Year's brunch? That was fun. Lots of connection, lots of care, fundraisers, new fundraisers. Vulnerability is up there a number of times. Congratulations, that's not easy. And babies. Babies and volunteers and relationships and learning. So congratulations, it has been a fantastic year. I also want to recognize one thing. This has been our 125th anniversary year. This is the year where we are celebrating 125 years of relentless love. And I want to thank Jerry Freed and our archives team for all the great work that they've been doing to make sure that we know what happened in the past. And one of the things, Jerry has been sending me pretty much everything wonderful from the archive that he finds. And I appreciate most of it. Jerry, I know you're watching online. One of the things that he recently shared with me was this beautiful article about our congregation, a successful suburban church from 1914. Ladies' Home Journal. And in it, one of the things that it recognizes is that a trait that this congregation has had from the very beginning is that we create something wonderful and then we give it to the community. This congregation had the first co-op, and after the co-op was a success, allowing people to pay a whole lot less for their groceries, it was given to the community. Out of our hands into the community. We had the Unity Forum, which was an incredible lecture series. After so many years of success, the congregation said, this shouldn't just be ours, this is now the community's. Gave it to the community. I want to recognize that a very similar thing is happening with the work we've been doing with the James Howe House. We never, from the very beginning, we know this project wasn't ours. It was a coalition from the very beginning, right? I'm looking at Maria Tao, the head of our social justice coordinating team. And we are at the point again where our congregation, which took on the burden of being the fiscal sponsor for the Howe House, which creates a certain relationship where even if we're not the owners of the project, it can feel like it, because all the money is coming through us. The Howe House has done the Friends of the Howe House have done incredible work. We are now, thank you to the work of Judy Reinierson's law firm. Thank you, Judy. We have done the incredible work of becoming a nonprofit, and it's time for us not just to emotionally also give the Friends of the Howe House to the community. It's not ours, never has been ours, it's always been a coalition. And now what a blessing that the community is holding it. So I want to recognize that. And I say that before saying thank you, because this congregation, individuals, our social justice coordinating team, everyone who participated, John Lytle, who tracked numbers, thank you. That was a lot of work for the treasurer and for the board. This project was made possible because of all of this effort, and it's not ours, it's the community's. What a gift. And we have a theme for our next congregational year, which is growing in spirit, justice, and connection. Yes, there is no comma after justice before the and. Are we going to be okay with that? Let's soften into this new reality. Great year, everyone. I'm excited for the next one.
Hi, everybody. I'm the opening act before the treasurer report. Before I reflect back on these 10 months of internship, right, next week, I want to share how honored I am to have walked alongside you in this special 125th year anniversary congregational year. I had no idea when I first came here, this internship was going to be so transformative and managing to shape me into someone who could successfully achieve preliminary fellowship and feel comfortable in my calling. I have approached every day the way some approach improvisational comedy by saying yes and to rise up to the occasion in front of me, like, for instance, hymn leader. I have taken every aspect of congregational life as a learning experience, and this has made me more able to stretch outside my comfort zone and participate by being wholly in the moment. I feel like I've gained more confidence in myself as I am learning and continuing to learn to deepen and have fun in my ministerial role. Thank you. So my first instinct for this report was the scientist in me said, okay, let's make a spreadsheet, a list of all the things I have done and give you all the stats. How many sermons, how many meetings, how many this and that. But I quickly realized that I lost count sometime in December.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Rose Scott. Let's just say I've participated in the congregational life as much as I was able to fit into my schedule. So instead, what I'm going to tell you is what I learned. I was one of the words, intern was one of the words in that word cloud. It was small, but important to me. Thank you. So for example, UUCM was my first experience creating a service in collaboration with a large worship team. And being part of the team has deepened my understanding of constructing worship services as a communal expression of creativity. I also learned that being prepared for worship and trusting the page, Rev Scott, when preaching allows for a holistic experience for the congregation, but also deepens my own sense of the sacred. Thank you. Here at UUCM, I was finally able to connect my previous pastoral experience at hospital and other field placements to the daily life of a congregation, where the people that I'm caring for pastorally, I also meet in other situations, and I really like doing that. So this congregational year, through serving you, I've found ways to expand my spiritual practice, not in the obvious ways of prayer and meditation, but also things like CMOG, the space to reflect in community about the Bible, that can be a spiritual practice too. And I wasn't simply doing things. I was growing my ministerial style and reflecting my growth in many of the things I did, all the rallies, New Jersey Together, then participating in out-front meetings, and connection cafes and potlucks and celebrations, and the archives, the list goes on and on. Thank you for all that. And the rule is, from the Ministerial Fellowship Committee, that interns have to separate for 1 year from the congregation they served. So that is what will happen after June 18th. That doesn't mean I don't love you, because I do. That's just a rule that we all must honor. I have loved being your intern. In fact, I love being the intern so much that after I was preliminary fellowshipped, and it was noted that I got such a great experience from my self-reflection, that I told the ministerial credentialing director, Reverend Jennifer Kwong, how much I recommend UUCM as an internship site. So thank you for all of this. What I have is the type of gratitude that I can only pay forward. So what I can promise you is to make good use of my learnings wherever I go. Thank you so much.
Let's hear it for intern Sabrina. We're going to miss her. Them. Sorry. Caught myself. Thank you so much. Transition. Soft transition. Now for the fun part. Let me move through here. Okay, first of all, yeah, this, right? Every year, what a process. First, I want to thank everybody involved in drafting this budget, led by John Lytle. The finance team, had a hand in it. The board reviewed it. Your work and balancing techniques to support our congregation's finances are not unnoticed. I do want to remind you that you all should have received a full copy with the details in your annual meeting packet about 2 weeks ago. And there was a special town hall that was just conducted last weekend for those who were able to attend. And no further ado, John will present the budget.
I'm going to begin by verifying that Sabrina was at every financial committee meeting, which is a monthly meeting. I'm going to present to you an overview of this past fiscal year and present a 2-page summary of the proposed budget for next year. When the two bodies Shannon mentioned, the Finance Committee and the board, went over the budget, it was in mind-numbing detail of 6.5 small print lines, but the 2 pages I go over are a good summary. First, some ground rules. Most of you know, except for perhaps some new members, our fiscal year every year begins on July 1st and ends on June 30th of the following year. So when I make reference, or when the slides make reference to the current year, it's July 1st of last year to June 30th of this year. And obviously there's some unknown there since it's not June 30th yet. And when I talk about the proposed budget, I'm talking about what we propose in the way of revenue and expenses for the year that begins July 1st, the July 1st coming up, through June of 2024. Here's an overview of how we're doing. In some areas, we're doing reasonably well, particularly at not overspending our expenses. Our endowment after a tough 2022 is $873,000, and that's a small increase. Not as big as we had hoped for. Our reserve fund is substantial, $115,000. I'll mention at this time that unless you see a notation like the one that says as of May 11th on this slide, if something's unlabeled, I again remind you this is about the current year that ends June 30th of this month. If you don't see something like as of May 11th, it's as of end of month April, because we have not finished closing out even May in our financial books. We set aside $53,000 to help with the budget deficit from this year. That's carryover surpluses from some years during the pandemic where we had very generous finances based on some legacy gifts and the government's PPP program. Now, some very good things that happened. A little bit of overlap with Reverend Scott's comments. The work to complete the roof is expected to last 100 years. Perhaps some of you will live long enough to report back on that. I'm hoping my younger daughter does. We also did an overhaul of the AC in the sanctuary, and that's why you're fairly comfortable today. And I think we had one other hot Sunday so far this spring. Also, we spent a lot of time and effort and artwork in revitalizing the Memorial Garden. All of this was accomplished, all these things I just mentioned, not in the regular operating budget, but via special funds or bequests, due to legacy giving from the John Horner estate, Monica Sylvia, and an anonymous donor. Now, let me share some bad news about this year and recent years. We have a terrible pattern of recurring budget deficits. Here's a 4-year history, including a projection for this year. This pattern is not sustainable. For this year, we assumed we would have a deficit of $31,000 and make our revenues match our expenses by taking $31,000 from the reserve fund. The board is very committed to bringing that practice to an end, not in this coming fiscal year, but the fiscal year after that. For this coming year, we've reduced the planned amount of replenishment from the reserve to $17,000 instead of the current year plan, which was $31,000. Now, let me say some things about the budget deficit from this year. It was assumed to be $31,000 when the budget was passed last year. That was the plan, another word for a budget. It's going to be worse than $31,000, and the reasons are somewhat obvious. The vast majority of it fits into 3 simple things. We made a plan, a budget, as to how much pledge income would be paid. Our most recent numbers are $93,000 short of the plan. We also make an assumption each year as to how much money it's safe to take from the endowment for the operating budget. It's based on a formula. It's always basically a guess. I mean, nobody can guess the stock market short term, only long term. And the plan was $15,000 too optimistic, but that's with the glory of hindsight. We also projected $25,000 in major fundraising, normally what we call our fall event, whether it's the named an auction or a bash. Nothing of that scale happened this fiscal year, so we came up short in that category by $14,000. We had some fall fundraisers that were successful, but they just weren't on the scale of the auction or the bash in the past. Short-term rentals were not as high as expected, but that might not be the case by the end of this month. Despite our income struggles, as I mentioned, our expenses are right on track. We have not overspent. Here's an overview for how we plan to address this coming year, and some of this I might have mentioned already. First of all, we're proposing in all ways, when the Budget Committee reviewed the budget, we tried to be more conservative than last year. And the net result is, instead of planning on using $31,000 from the reserve fund, we plan on using $17,000 from the reserve fund. And we are very committed, and the we here is not just the Finance Committee, but the board also. We are very committed to not letting the deficit go over $17,000 this year. We will carefully monitor income and expenses, and if necessary, we will make difficult cuts to come in on budget this year. Let's say things turn out better than usual, and we have a surplus this year. Any surplus this year, and probably 1 or 2 years in the future, will be used to replenish the reserve fund, which is used for when we have unexpectedly large deficits or perhaps even a small deficit. But that hasn't been the case recently. Now, I'd like to give you just an overview of the budget process. It involves one committee that Shannon didn't mention. There's normally the Finance Committee, well, the board that's not really a committee, and a special committee that meets a few times that Chris headed this year, the Budget Committee. The process starts in November and December with the board and the Finance Committee reviewing priorities. It continues in January. Request forms go out to all the significant parts of the congregations, all of the committees, social justice, etc., saying, what do you want next year? Not everybody gets what they want. In February, the pledge drive begins, and we met with staff. We knew at that time that we were short, shall we say, this year. And we started being very, very careful. Not that we weren't already careful. We really did well on expenses this year, looking to spend less. During March, the Budget Committee and the Finance Committee had several meetings on the budget, and the board had one special meeting. I'm sorry, the board special meeting was in April. Now, during April, the board and the Finance Committee reviewed the budget one more time, approved the proposed budget, and in its condensed two-page form, you're about to see that budget. That's why in June, the last step is considering the budget for all of you, because we are a democracy, to approve. Some last-minute highlights. Again, these are all towards being more realistic about this coming year. Pledge income, expected pledge income, has been reduced by $22,000. The fall fundraiser, we don't just plan on it happening. The committee that's working on it is deep into it. It will happen this year. Fundraising is expected to be up by $7,000 as a result, and endowment earnings hopefully will be up compared to last year. Here's an overview of the proposed income for next year. It also compares each category to the budget we worked with this year. You can see that there's 7 lines of detail. I'm sorry, 6. The 7th line is a total for the 6 before. And the key differences are projecting a large, perhaps more realistic total for pledges and contributions. It's not, that line is most of our income. It's not just the pledges, but there's other donations to the congregation and other contributions that fall into other categories, but the vast majority of our income comes from pledges. But another example is the next line down, facility income. No change projected there. We hope it might do better than that. Endowment earnings, minor change. We're optimistic that it'll do $4,000 better. Not just better than what we received this year, but better than what we budgeted for this year. RE fees, not really material, but you can see there's a small difference there. From the reserve fund, that's a big difference. We planned on spending $31,000 from the reserve fund to make our revenues match our expenses. For the coming year, it's $17,000 and change. Now, on to the expense summary. Similar in format. In a way, Sabrina appears here. You can see that our expenses for salary go down for approximately $40,000. Well, this year we had an intern. Next year we won't have an intern. The other major change here is that a few staff members received small salary increases this year, very well deserved. The people that got these small increases this year did not have one at all the prior year. Let's see. The other thing, Reverend Scott deserves a lot of credit for negotiating with the UUA, as I understand it. Our UUA dues, the formula was changed this year, and the result is that the amount our congregation is expected to contribute is $6,000 less. $6,000 less next year than the budget was this year. And this change was came about after the budget was formulated last year. We actually spent less in this category this year than this year's budget. There's no other really material change on this page. No, nothing else. So,